A reception class at Friars Primary School in Shoebury-Ness, a small coastal town in Essex. The school believes, in line with most research, that children at this age learn best through play, both inside and outside the classroom.
What you can see here in our reception environment are very happy, engaged children.
1, 2,
So these children here are practicing their numbers, they're learning how to do their sums together, they're teaching each other, they're taking on the role of the teacher. But if you look at their body language and how relaxed they are, we know they feel safe and happy here, and that's when we know children will learn the most.
Let's take the picture, ready?
But staff here fear this kind of learning is under threat, and a key trigger will be formally testing children in literacy and numeracy when they are just 4 years old, making England the only country in the world to subject such young children to a high-stakes test. The government's baseline assessment will test all children in their first 6 weeks of school. They'll be taken out of the classroom to sit what will be a 20-minute test, delivered in English and probably on a computer. And schools can use the results to predict how children will do a full 7 years later when they take SATs in Year 6. The government says that baseline testing is needed to judge how much progress children make by the time they leave primary school and to hold schools to account. But there's widespread concern that baseline will pressure schools to narrow the reception curriculum and push out play, and that the test itself is simply unfair.
I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to measure from when children start school to when they leave our school. I think that is important, and the government will want some measure, but it's how it's done. And I think the best way to do that is through using our highly professional staff, you know, who are very experienced in early years, using observation to identify where the child's starting point is and then work from there. I think it's dangerous to bring down formal learning right down to reception. We want our adults to be confident, to be independent, to be resilient. We want them to be, you know, imaginative and confident, etc. And yet, in reception, if we bring formal learning down straight away, those children haven't got the chance to develop those skills. They're being made to conform, to sit, to, you know, do as they're told, to, you know, I just think it will dumb down the amazing thing which is early years.
There's a real danger with baselining that as a result of how children perform in the initial test, they'll be labelled because of it. And the fact of the matter is, children's development is their development. It can't be sped up. Children develop at their own pace. So the dangers of children perhaps who score poorly in these tests, the danger for them is that they could find themselves constantly put with other children who are seen to be the same level, and they could see themselves perhaps constantly grouped with those children all the way through school, and that will affect how they're perceived by their teachers and their peers, how they perceive themselves too, and of course that will impact on how they progress. But the fact of the matter is that testing of young children is unethical, and it's not about data, and we cannot allow children just to become data.
We've been here before with baseline testing. It was tried both in 1997 and 2015. So what can we learn from those who've studied it in depth or had to administer it?
I think it's a return to a failed policy. It's a return to a very unpopular policy. We know from our existing research and all the data on this age group that there are real differences in attainment at this age for boys, pupils from disadvantaged backgrounds, pupils with special educational needs, summer-born children, and pupils who don't speak English as their first language. And so that will further entrench or reinforce the differences by social group and therefore widen gaps and go against the government's aim of furthering social mobility. And another problem with baseline is that there is no evidence to suggest that we can use a score when a child is 4 to predict what they're going to be able to do at 11.
I was involved in baseline the first time round, and lots of children became very distressed, just horrible really, having to pull the children out when they've only just started school and they haven't got their confidence yet. and they're not ready, and I don't think you saw a true reflection of what they could do anyway, because half the time they're nervous and they don't know you. I think it put lots of children off at an early stage, thinking this is what school is, and I've seen a change in children after they've undertaken baseline.
The government claims to have carried out a comprehensive consultation into baseline, but perhaps they didn't talk enough to parents.
I just think that it's not really necessary, and it's, like you say, extra pressure, not just pressure on them, but pressure on the teachers as well, and then pressure on the parents. I just think something like this is going to make parents and teachers worry even more.
It may just put a fear in them from the outset.
Yeah.
They don't know the child at this point.
No.
They need to get to know the child and understand what works for that child. You just think a test, you get a score, and that could be it. They'll be like, oh, well, these are below average, so we'll give them this curriculum, and these are above average.
They're just being judged against each other, and that's not fair at the age of 4.
That's the thing, like, what is the motivation? Like, I feel quite cynical about it, because it does seem like it's just for the government and it's just for numbers, and it's not actually for the benefit of the children or the teachers.
Of course, the one group which wasn't consulted will be the most affected. And what's your favourite thing when you're doing your learning? What's your favourite thing?
Letters and sounds. Letters and sounds.
Because?
Because it's fun. Because it's fun. We learn to make sandcastles today, and circles going on top of the sandcastle. And we've been learning rectangles in the sand as well. And you get to put a flag on top.
Show me how you make a rectangle.
Once upon a time there was...
Good. Well done. That's brilliant writing, Amelia.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh!
The early years sector is not just being shaken up by the prospect of baseline testing. The government has signed up to a new international test on 5-year-olds called Mini PISA, despite all other European countries saying no to it. And Ofsted has just published a report calling for more formal teaching in reception, to the dismay of many practitioners.
I would say that I've never ever seen early years under such threat as it is now, because of testing, because of PISA, because of the pressures from a really flawed national curriculum, because of the funding crisis. So actually, as a sector, as a community, and including parents and carers within that, it's time to really make a stand for our children's education.
Baseline testing is due to cost £10 million over 2 years. Trials could start later this year. 3 potential providers have declined to tender, with one saying that the tests are verging on the immoral. More Than a Score is campaigning to ensure baseline is abandoned for good.